The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Over to you, Mark.
Good evening to our attendees in Europe, good afternoon to our attendees in the US, and good morning to our attendees in Australia and indeed Asia. You're all very welcome to the webinar today, Strategies for Protecting Your Wealth in 2014 and Beyond. It is great to see people from all over the world attending the webinar, and is a testament to our guest today, Mr. Gerald Celente. Thanks to you all for taking the time to register and tune in. We are delighted to welcome the insightful and always thought-provoking Mr. Celente. Hello, Gerald. How are you today?
Hello, Mark. I'm fine. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. We met in, I think it was November 2012. It seems like an eon ago now, and I had the privilege of buying you a drink when you were in Dublin, and it really was a wonderful event. I think there was some 150 to 200 people there that night, and I know that they all went home feeling that they had got their money's worth. It was a really, really good event. So it's good to renew your acquaintance again, so to speak.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, a pleasure. Yeah. So without further ado, we have approximately 30 minutes today, which we'll split between an interview with Gerald, and then there'll be a few key questions. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. There'll be a few key questions that we have for Gerald that we think will be a benefit to the listeners. We will then turn our attention to answer some questions from you, the audience. And this is a part of the webinar that is always very popular. We'll do our best to answer as many of your questions as we can. Please use the questions section on your GoToWebinar panel to post a question. I'd like to do a quick introduction to your panel today. My name is Mark O'Byrne. I'm the head of research and founder at GoldCore. I am the author of GoldCore's widely read market updates, and we have an excellent speaker for you today who I feel needs little introduction. Publisher of the internationally respected TrendsJournal and founder of the TrendsResearchInstitute in 1980, Gerald Celente is a pioneer trend strategist and has a great track record at predicting many of the most important financial, economic, and geopolitical trends and indeed events of recent years. These include the recent financial and economic crises, the panic of '08, the collapse of the Soviet Union, the dot-com bust, the 1997 Asian currency crisis, the 1987 world stock market crash, the quagmire in Afghanistan, or quagmires should I say, in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the increased terrorism against America. And he also predicted the sovereign debt crisis and indeed the last two recessions. Quite a track record there, I think you'll agree. Please visit Gerald's website, TrendsJournal.com, for more information about Gerald and the Trends Journal. And having been a subscriber myself, I would have no hesitation in highly recommending the Trends Journal. A brief introduction to GoldCore, ourselves, the host of today's webinar. Founded in 2003 as a precious metals specialist, we are devoted to the provision of honest, objective, jargon-free advice in our arenas of excellence. Today, we are a brand name and a trusted and recognized bullion expert. We enable people to take delivery of bullion and to store precious metals with unparalleled safety in Zurich, Perth, Hong Kong, Singapore, and in other secure locations around the world. Please visit GoldCore.com for more detailed information about us and a range of bullion products and allocated, segregated storage accounts. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, Gerald will answer a series of questions to address some key topics that we think our listeners will benefit from understanding much better. So let's get stuck in, and the first question that we have is, and it's a tough question, Gerald. We'll start with the hard question. You recently said that there will be panic in the streets and an economic crisis this year in 2014. When do you think that might happen?
It's happening now. Look what's going on in Thailand. People have been on the streets now for, what, 3 months, 5 dead today. Look what's going on in Ukraine. It's a revolution, a civil war. What's going on in Syria, go over to Libya, take a trip to Yemen and Bahrain. How about those riots going on as we're speaking in Venezuela? The decline of the Turkish lira to, again, going back to all-time lows. the unrest in Brazil and throughout other places in whether it's Bahrain, whether it's in Bangladesh with the people demonstrating, in Cambodia. It's one country after another. And you look at the data and you see how few people have so much of the money and how so many people have so little. We're on the brink of something that we've never seen in our lifetimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think it's only a matter of time before it spreads to those Western nations and we see it in the streets of Europe and in the US?
Well, again, you're seeing it in Italy with the pitchfork movements that keep raging, the distrust they have with the new government of Renzi, who they affectionately call Fonzie, because he's about as bad as actor as the other guy was. Another boy that's never worked a day in his life and has been sucking off the public tits since 1996. The third new prime minister in Italy that's been put in there without an election. How's that for democracy? And that's really the same thing in every other country. These aren't democracies. These are mafias, two-party mafias, three-party mafias that are running the whole deal. And so what you're looking at is massive youth unemployment around the world just keeps escalating. It's even now starting to hit Australia and countries that seem to be immune from it. So we're going to see more and more uprisings. I don't think it's going to happen here in the States for a variety of reasons. People don't have the fight in them anymore. That Yankee spirit's long gone. And the other thing is, if you get out of line, the cops are going to kill you. They'll beat the hell out of you. And I'm not making it up. Anybody could go to YouTube one day after another. You could see atrocities of cops. There's a recent one just a few days ago. A young college student in Texas was jogging along in her shorts with her headphones on, and the cops yelled at her she was jaywalking, and she didn't hear them. And you see these clowns pounce on her, these big fat slobs, throw her down to the ground, and two more tough guys in their bicycles and their military uniforms on throw her into a squad car. You get out of line in the United States, Jack, you're dead. So, no, there's no protests here. Look what happened with the Occupy movements. So we're not going to see it in the U.S. You're not going to see it in a lot of other countries where the police are nothing more than the hitmen for the financial institutions and the political gangs.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I suppose, it's worrying when that's the case in the land of the free. It is a very worrying development. And you spoke about Australia there and rising unemployment, and obviously we see that in a huge way in Europe. So in a world of very precarious employment prospects, what businesses or sectors do you think offer the most opportunity to entrepreneurs and people trying to secure an income for themselves?
You have to follow the money. I mean, as harsh as it may sound, it's the truth, because you see a great redistribution of wealth. So in understanding that, you make products that have quality, particularly food. Clean food, term, by the way, that I came up with in 1993, is going to be huge. There are a lot of people that don't want to eat GMO, chemically laced foods. You're going to see a big drop-off in fish consumption as more and more people understand that this so-called farm fish, can be deadly to their health. There's a lot of them, these farms dump a load of antibiotics into it, and the fish to fatten the fish up, they're eating feeds that have nothing to do with their natural diet. I mean, unless you've seen a lot of salmon going through cornfields in a country near you, usually they don't eat that or soybeans. So you're not getting the benefits that people think they're getting by eating fish. And so you're going to start seeing more and more demand for buy local, high quality. The other one has anything to do with healthcare, and particularly alternative healthcare, complementary, using the best of each, the science and the best of natural. more and more of that, particularly as the generations age, and we have aging populations throughout the world. So those are, just some of the hot spots. And the biggest, of course, is an alternative energy, but not solar, geothermal, wind, or biofuel. More breakthrough than that. So those are just some of the new things to start looking into. And plus, of course, digital learning. It's a whole new world out there. Little kids are growing up with, on using handhelds and devices that no one had ever dreamt of before. So the whole learning process is starting to change. So you're going to start seeing more and more of that as well, internet learning.
Very, very interesting. So it's almost a post-corporate world that we're moving to more, as you said, more local and smaller scale solutions that are more beneficial to people. And on the medicine side, it's more almost prevention is better than cure, moving away from the pharmaceutical model. And in terms of the countries and regions that you'd be most optimistic about in the coming years, if you were a slightly younger man, where might you emigrate to in search of opportunities?
It's difficult to say. I was, at one time I wanted to leave the United States because, I don't dig fascism. And that's what it is. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. And that's what Mussolini called fascism. And when you have capitalism is dead, too big to fail, it does not exist in capitalistic societies. And you have it there in Ireland and other places as well where they bail out banks. So they're forms of fascism. And I realize that there's really no place to go. And what I'm doing and trying to do the best that I can is to change as much as I can the direction that the country is going. And is it futile? I don't believe so. I mean, if Obama can, if Clinton can, if Bush can, if Sarkozy can, if Hollande can, if Cameron can, if Bill Blair can, you can. Unless you think that their mother was better than yours. So just to keep the conversation polite, let's just call it equal.
Interesting. So yeah, you basically believe that we need to work on almost our local communities and all strive to make a difference in that regard, and I suppose that will create the opportunities then ultimately.
Exactly. Because when enough people change, everything changes. It bewilders me that so few could rule and ruin the lives of so many, and so many let so few rule and ruin their lives.
That's a good way of putting it. In terms of investing, I know you're not a financial advisor and you're not here to give financial advice, but presumably in the scenario that you see unfolding, you would favor hard assets over financial or paper assets. And I suppose as an example of that, what do you think of whether it be property or agricultural land?
Yeah, all of those are good, but of course you have to be careful. I mean, suppose you have agricultural land in California. You have one of the worst droughts in 200 years, or 500 years. So it's very tricky. There's no clear solution. And of course, having nothing to do with your show, I've been buying gold since 1978. And I still believe in it. And I believe that the only way that the economies are going to continue to not decline is for more stimulus. So, and the more they stimulate, the lower the value of the commodity. So, of the currency rather. So I believe in gold and silver, gold more than silver.
Very good. I'll come
and
to
only
that.
I only say gold more than silver because I know more about gold because as I said, I've been trading it since 1978.
That's right. Yeah. Well, actually, there's a question that's come in from one of the attendees on that, so we'll explore that a little bit with you in a further question. In a recent interview, I think it was on Russia Today. I'm not sure, but I think it was Russia Today. You said that you thought we might see, no, sorry, no, sorry, I'm getting mixed up with that was a different interview. The question is, might we see another 9/11 style event in the US or in Europe, which might then be blamed for an economic collapse?
Sure. Why not? False flag or real. How many more countries does the United States have to attack before there's payback. I mean, if you lived in Iraq or Afghanistan, or you were Libyan, and a foreign nation came in and destroyed your country, killed your family, destroyed your neighborhood, killed loved ones, would you want to get revenge?
This classic blowback.
Yeah, and I love the language that they use. They call them militants and terrorists. We used to say in the Bronx, payback's a bitch, and everybody gets uptight when somebody fights back. We have no business being in these countries. I'm an American. I'm of Italian descent, but I love America. I could never have been who I am if I was born in Italy. There'd be too many restrictions. We've been put into a kind of a system. And as an American, I believe in what the Founding Fathers believed in, and that was no foreign entanglements. And then I get these little clowns, these little sociopaths and psychopaths saying what we have to do in other countries and spread democracy. Which one of these little boys would have gone to George Washington, the guy that led the revolution, a warrior, who gives his farewell address and says no foreign entanglements, and go up to him and say, George, you're full of baloney. I know better than you. My name is George Bush. My name is Bill Clinton. My name is Jimmy Carter. My name is Richard Nixon. My name is Johnson. My name is Obama. I know better than you, George. I know better than Ben Franklin. I know better than Thomas Jefferson. I say let's go invade every other country we want to because, little boys and girls, we're going to spread freedom and democracy.
Well, yeah, you put it powerfully. I see I got ahead of myself in terms of the questions there. I remember now the Russia Today interview was I think you were talking about your experience on 911, and you had a concern about the nuclear power station there that's north of New York, and how that might affect the financial system. I just wanted to touch base with you on that briefly because I found that very, very interesting. Just your experiences on 911.
What happened was you go to our website, TrendsJournal.com, and go to the forecast page. And USA Today used to run our forecasts, our trend forecasts. And that one in December of 2014, my trend forecast was that Americans wouldn't be safe at home or abroad. And this is several months before 9/11. And I've been writing about the possibility of a terror strike in the United States in my books Trends 2000 and in the Trends journals for years, because of foreign policy. So when 9/11 happened, it was no surprise to me. And as I'm watching it unfold on TV, I remember, when they broke away from CNBC News, seems as though a private plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. And I used to do a lot of hot air ballooning. It was a beautiful September day. You don't crash into the World Trade Center by mistake. So that was the first red flag that went up for me. And then as I watched it unfold and I saw that plane come crashing into it, I called up a woman I used to be dating up here. She lives just north of me. And I used to live in Rhinebeck at the time, a town called Tivoli. And she's French. And I said, listen, Marie-Pierre, I said, go to the bank, get all your money out of the bank. I said, you just hit the World Trade Center. She said, oh, Gerald, you're kidding. I said, go over to the bank and get your money out. I picked up the phone. I had all my money in Fleet Bank at the time that was now bought out, I think, by Bank of America since. And I had it in certificates of deposit. And I said, listen, I want my money out. I want to send a wire transfer to the bank in Rhinebeck. I started giving him the wire transfer number. And he said, Mr. Celente, Wall Street is closed. CDs are financial instruments traded on Wall Street. When Wall Street reopens, you could get your money. I was ready to get out of here. I have Gerald Celente's GC's 3Gs, guns, gold, and a getaway plan. I lived north of New York, about 2 hours. In between that, 45 miles north, is the Indian Point nuclear power plant. And I know New York like the back of my hand. Lived here most of my life. And they're saying that the planes are going down the Hudson River. Of course, the power plant's on the Hudson River. And I'm saying to myself, if they hit that thing, word just came out that they whacked the Pentagon. If this thing goes, there's going to be chaos like people have never seen before in history. So I'm ready to head up to Canada, which is 4.5 hours north. because I figure if I get to Canada and there's chaos, from there I could go anywhere I want in the world. So that was my getaway plan. In the meantime, so I can't get my money out, but I had gold, and I had guns, I still do, and I had a getaway plan. I was going to Canada. When Marie-Pierre went to the Key Bank near where she lived, they refused to give her her money. They said, "Are you French? Every time there's a problem with America, you always betray us." And of course, Marie-Pierre,
cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
What?
The cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Yep. So of course, her and being French, she got her money.
Yeah,
and so I was ready to leave. So the moral of the story is, if you don't have your money in your possession, it's not your money. And all you have to do is look what's going on in Ukraine and how the massive bank withdrawals are going on that's hardly making the news. Look what happened in Cyprus when they closed down the banks. Look what happened in America when they closed down Wall Street and you had certificates of deposit and you couldn't cash them in. So if you have gold or silver, you're in a golden position, because as all of those ATM machines aren't working anymore, and when they're putting restrictions on how much you could draw out, you have a cash cow when you have, the real deal in your possession.
Absolutely, and that leads into our next question neatly, which is that expression that you have that we really like: if you don't hold it, you don't own it. And I think that's a fundamental thing that we believe in as well, in terms of the ownership of the asset, whether it be in your possession or owning it in the safest way possible, is very, very important. So for wealthy individuals who do not feel comfortable keeping too much bullion or large amounts of bullion in their home, would you recommend fully allocated and fully legal title to bullion in very, very safe depositories? And where in the world outside of the US and Canada would you feel most comfortable owning bullion?
Again, I would leave that up to anybody else's decision. For me, if it's not mine, it's not mine. Trust is a funny thing. One of the lines I use. I was married 23 years, and I look at my wife. I said, "What's going on?" Blah 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 blah. And then I'm divorced. Trust ends. That's where trust ends with me. And so, people have to make their own decision on something like this. Again, if you don't have it in your possession, to me, you don't own it. I also got shafted from MF Global. I used to buy gold. I used to buy futures. So let's say in April, I would buy a future to take delivery in November. And I did. I bought futures, and I kept putting money into my account so that when November came, I could pick up the gold. Well, I never made it to November. I made it to late October, October 31st, Halloween. Perfect. MF Global declared bankruptcy, and they stole my money out of my segregated account. So again,
it's unbelievable. And Corzine and these people, no one's been charged there, and no criminal prosecutions.
There's no criminal prosecutions for any of the top murderers and thieves. The word justice only means just us, J-U-S-T-U-S. I mean, come on, everybody grow up. See what's going on. They get a free ride. It's no different than, medieval days. Justice. It's a joke.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that is increasingly the case. Or you can sense that more and more to be the case.
You talk about all the trillions of dollars robbed from the people, from the banks. Not one head on Wall Street rolled. You know what they just did over here? They just put an 84-year-old nun who already did 9 months in jail for another 35 months for breaking into a nuclear weapons facility. 84 years old, and you know what her crime was?
She's a peace protester.
Yeah. She broke the 1918 Sabotage Act. And what did she do? Her and 2 other people that got 64 months, and again, they're in their late 50s and 60s, these other 2 people, they wrote biblical sayings, about peace. And when they had baby bottles filled with blood to not spill anymore. And you know what the judge, I'm sick of these judges, by the way. A bunch of political sellouts with funny costumes telling me how I have to interpret the law, like I'm too stupid to understand the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. What this judge had the nerve to tell this nun and these other people was that by serving their term in prison, they will realize to obey and work within, quote, the political system. Work within the political system. Yeah, let's work with the Bloods and the Crips. That has nothing to do with the Constitution about working in the political system, but a sellout judge that's part of the political system, it's perfect. And where's the Pope? Where are all the priests? Well, this nun is rotting in jail.
There's some crazy things happening in the world. There's also a woman who, I think she went off the grid, and she was collecting rainwater for her house, and she wasn't getting her own electricity. I think she was prosecuted as well.
Yeah, right, so down in Florida.
That's right, yeah, just stuff doesn't make sense at all, you know. So, anyway, yeah, I'd like to explore that more with you again, and we'll look at that again. Just in terms of, we briefly looked at the gold and silver, so you are more, I suppose, a gold man rather than a silver man. But you do see merits of owning both precious metals, don't you?
Yes, I'm 80-20. 80 gold, okay. 20 silver.
And you see silver more for return, gold more for safety and financial insurance, or?
You know, gold's been around forever. You know, you go down to, you know, it's forever. It's been, you know, whether it's in mythology or ancient cultures, you know, it's not going anywhere. And you look at the Chinese, how much they're buying up of it. Now they're the world's largest consumer of gold. So I ask myself, are they going to try to undermine the United States dollar as the reserve currency and put the yuan out in the world market and have it backed by gold rather than backed by mountains of debt? So when you see the Chinese, India, you know, cultures that have been around a long time, buying gold at the levels that they are, you know, to me, you know, stuff's not going anywhere. And by the way, one of the reasons China overtook India is because the Indian government, to stop the run on the rupee, has put in vast, you know, dire restrictions on the purchase of gold.
That's right, import taxes,
very hard to buy
sales taxes, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's all, in fact, there's a bit of a war on gold, and you'd wonder whether we may see the same thing in other countries in the coming months and years. So, well, that's very good. You've answered our questions, and thank you for that, Gerald. You're thought-provoking and insightful as ever. Excellent food for thought for the attendees today. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we will now take questions from you, the attendees, and we've got some good questions in. So let's get straight into those questions. The first question is, yeah, it's a good one. Do you believe that we will have a deflationary collapse like the 1930s, or a hyperinflationary collapse akin to that in Weimar, Germany, or the Soviet Union and Argentina in recent years?
I think a combination of the two, depending on where you are. The result is the same, and that is you're paying more because the value of your currency is going down. So you could call it deflationary in one aspect, but you could have a deflationary currency. So in the terms that your currency isn't buying what it used to. And then, of course, the real deflationary, like they had in Japan, where they have a long deflationary cycle. And it's really disastrous because, you know, people don't take out loans. They don't speculate on the future because they see things going lower. But then on the other hand, you have the rampant inflation cycles like you have going on now in Venezuela and in Argentina and in other countries. So I think a combination of the two. But again, in either situation, you know, precious metals are a safe haven for either event because the currencies either get hit or you're paying more for what you used to pay less for. So, of course, not as much in a deflationary cycle, but you can have a deflationary cycle, but at the same time, your currency declining. So they're just as you're having with Japan. They still really haven't gotten out of they're trying to create inflation,
Yeah.
and they've devalued the yen some 19% in less than a year, but it's still costing people more to buy goods because so they're not making it up by a devaluation.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's quite an increasing consensus that a lot of people do see deflation initially, more deflation, and then we'll see more so-called stimulus and currency debasement from the various central banks, and that will ultimately lead to very high inflation and, very worst case scenario, hyperinflation will be possible as well.
Well, again, I want to make this very clear that in the United States in the 1930s, they caused a deflationary period, but they never talk about it. So in other words, it's not only supply and demand that causes inflation, as you well know. So what happened in the U.S., they forced everybody to turn in their gold bullion, gold coins, gold certificates, and they forced them to sell it to the U.S. government at $20.62 an ounce. And remember, the dollar was backed by gold back then.
Yeah.
When they got all the gold in, they repegged the price of gold to $35 an ounce, which means that you just lost 70% of your purchasing power.
Exactly, 70% devaluation, yeah. And, yeah.
So you didn't have the hyperinflation, but yes, you did. But they called it a devaluation. That's the point I was making.
Well, exactly, and the stock markets, the Dow Jones was down 90%, peak to trough, and property markets fell 60, 70, 80%. Meanwhile, gold went up 70%. So again, in that deflationary collapse, gold did what it said in the tin, and it was a safe haven asset. You may have mentioned precious metals there, and that leads into the next question from one of the attendees, which is, what is your view on platinum and palladium at William Coins and Bars? That you're more focused and more familiar with gold and silver?
Yeah, again, you look at platinum, palladium, and a lot of them have to do with industrial use, and that's why I'm not as big on silver. That has a big industrial use as well. So if the economies decline, there's less demand for industrial metals, whether they're precious or non, whether it's copper or platinum. So there's less of a demand when there's a decline, industrial decline.
Absolutely, no, we would share that view. We do sell platinum and palladium, and we tell people very much that they should be diversified in their overall portfolio, but also diversified within the precious metals component of the portfolio. And therefore, you may have 50, 60, 70% in gold, 20, 30% in silver, and then we would say maybe you put 5% in platinum and palladium. And they are a hedge against inflation as well, but as you said, they're not quintessentially, they're not monetary, and they don't have quite as much the safe haven characteristics that both gold and silver would have. The next question is obviously very, very topical in terms of what's happening with China and Japan, the tensions there and ongoing tensions in the Middle East. And it is, do you see war in the Middle East or between China and Japan, or indeed both, leading to another world war?
One of our Trends journals a few issues back was the First Great War of the 21st century. World War I was caused by sociopaths and psychopaths in government and the military. Very, very ignorant people and out of their minds. A totally avoidable war, as many others have been avoidable, but none more so obvious than that. We're at the same juncture right now. And you're seeing what's going on in Ukraine. It can't be more obvious. I mean, again, I'm a political atheist. I don't take sides in these issues. And when you look at Ukraine, what was the issue that sparked the unrest back in November? It was a decision not to join the European Union. And again, they had a criminal operation going during that time, who was in government, and the one before that was criminal, and the one before that. So, it's just what it is, like so many other countries. But one of the reasons for not joining the EU was because of the harsh austerity measures that the IMF was going to impose upon them. And anybody from Ireland, Portugal, Italy, and other countries, Greece particularly, knows what the effects of austerity measures do to an economy and to the people, Spain. And so they backed out. That was the genesis of the so-called uprising there. It all had to do with money. And you listen to the people in the United States, the Assistant Secretary of State employing the, as well as Ashton from the United Nations and other groups trying to get Ukrainians to join in the European Union. To which I say to myself, why would anybody in their right mind want to join the European Union? Oh, you want to be like Ireland? How about Greece? Hey, Spain's having a lovely time. 40% youth unemployment in Italy. Hey, how about Portugal? So what I'm getting to is that you have people that are fomenting the first great war of the 21st century. You have that madman over there in Japan, Abe, who's now ripping apart the pacifist constitution that was put in place following World War II, and rewriting history as to Japan's role in it in World War II, and then going to a shrine in which they have war criminals in to really poke more at China and South Korea. So then, of course, the United States is now making new alliances with Philippines and their Pivot Asia move, and even all the way over to Australia. So I see the world moving to war, and unless the people do something to stop it, the mad men and the mad women are leading the world to the next great war of the 21st century. Look what they did to Libya, that great humanitarian mission, as they called it, launched by the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Barack Obama. Destabilized the richest country in North Africa at the time, and have destabilized the entire region from Mali down to Central Africa, all the way across to Yemen and Bahrain, and into Egypt. So, you know, it's you can see where it's going. Oh, now just yesterday, Hollande, the little chicken hawk out of France, announced that they're sending more troops into Central Africa. Little guy can't get over their colonial trip from way back when, you know, the French Sudan. These are sick people, psychopaths and sociopaths. So don't forget to follow your leader, raise your flag, and sing your national anthem as they destroy the world.
Scary stuff. Yeah, the Japan thing is, as you said, they're ripping up their constitution, and it is, you know, they're looking to their fascist past, you know, and that is not encouraging to see, and especially with China. You know, it's China emerging as a new superpower in the world. You know, you can see these frictions, and they're beginning to bubble over. You know. So I suppose the bottom line is you do see, we answered the next question.
Well, I really have to go now, Mark. I'm sorry.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'm running about 10 minutes overtime. They're signaling
You're a good bit over.
I have another engagement coming up soon.
Okay, well, to conclude quickly, just I suppose the light at the end of the tunnel, you do see these dark times, but basically, I think your bottom line, that's what I loved about the event in Dublin was, you see these dark times, but you do see light at the end of the tunnel, and you do see if people are prepared and they take certain steps that they will come through these difficult times. Yes,
and again, you know, you prepare for the worst. If the worst doesn't happen, what have you lost? Nothing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if the worst happens and you didn't prepare, you lose everything. So you have nothing to lose by preparing. And the other issue, of course, is the future is in the hands of the people. And when they get that in their head, then we can have the kind of future that we deserve. And again, anybody that looks up to their political leader, in my book, looks down upon themselves.
So we hold the power ourselves, our families, our communities, and we need to take the power back in effect.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you don't take it back, you guarantee they're going to take you down. So thank you very much, and all the best.
Absolute pleasure, Gerald. Thank you for coming on today, and yeah, look forward to talking to you again.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Take care. Bye-bye. So there you have it, folks. We ran out of time there. Gerald was very, very generous with his time. I think we went a good bit over there. We didn't get to the final question, which was I know he's a great fan of American music, and particularly of American jazz music. And the question came in about the favorite musician of all time. So we thought that was a good question to put to him. But hopefully we'll get to that question another day. Yeah, I'd like to thank Gerald. He imparted some important and valuable information today. Unfortunately, that is all that we have time for. I think it was a very useful and informative session. It was recorded, so we'll send you all a link to the recording, and you can share that with those who you think would benefit from the knowledge imparted. So thank you again, and yeah, take care of yourselves, and we'll talk.